Hi, everyone. Thanks again for joining us for another episode of the Daily BizLink. Jane Cebrysnki is back, and today we're continuing the conversation on winning well-being. And today we're focused on by not making assumptions. So Jane, thanks for being here.
Thank you so much, Lindsay. Let's start off by 10 moment.
My 10 moment. Well, we often talk about the importance of celebrating successes, whether that's for ourselves, for our team members, our loved ones, our family members. Well, my better half just opened up his brand new office. And so we had a big celebration last night and it was so much fun. So happy to be a part and help him in celebrating that big accomplishment in his professional journey.
Oh, that's so awesome. Sometimes those 10 moments aren't just about us, but they are about the people that we love so much and we spend time with. So I love that. So on this little journey that we've been talking about, really, I've been focused on being a champion for well-being, not only my well-being, but really giving hope to your audience and those people out there that they can really become champions for themselves and their well-being. And so I thought we'd have a conversation about making assumptions, because that is something we all do and can really, really impact our emotional well-being for sure.
Absolutely. I think we're all guilty of making assumptions from time to time.
When you really start to practice being aware of this, it becomes comical in a certain way, but it can actually be very emotionally toxic and very stressful if it's something that you do on an ongoing basis. And here's the thing, we know the human mind has a need for explanation, justification. It wants answers, and so we make them up sometimes if we're not able to get the answer. And that's what assumptions are. And so we can be making assumptions about, well, I think this is human nature, is we make assumptions that people see the world the way we do, feel the way we feel, judge the way we do. And so sometimes that can cause us to then make assumptions about ourselves and not really be truthful and honest with ourselves out of fear that that same kind of judgment will come back to us. And of course, we see assumptions being made all the time in relationships. I can think personally, we make the assumption that somebody should be able to read my mind and know what I want. And then when they don't respond in the way that I think that they should, it's a tendency for us to get upset. And so making assumptions is big in relationships and can really cause a lot of emotional stress.
I should unmute myself. That would probably be helpful. What would be helpful, I think, is, finding those winning strategies that help us with identifying those trigger points. And then also from an energy management standpoint, Jane, how do you encourage individuals to think through this and overcome it?
Well, I immediately anchor in two of our tools, which is number one, I don't know their story. So before I go down that track of making all kinds of assumptions, I just can stop myself and say, you know what? I don't know their story. And it creates the opportunity to ask the questions. So getting really good at asking clarifying questions and keep asking questions until it's clear. And rather than allow yourself to go down that dark hole, I think somebody once referred to it as a bus rolling down a hill. You've got to stop that thought process immediately. If you anchor in the tool, it'll immediately give you some emotional management. It'll immediately allow yourself to pause. And then if you can't get the answer in the moment, let's say, somebody didn't text you back, and all of a sudden you're making all these assumptions. They don't like me. They don't, want to be with me or whatever. You can just kind of go time out. I don't know their story. When there's an opportunity, I'll be able to ask some questions and get some clarity around that.
So how do we ask questions that don't automatically make people feel threatened?
Well, I think that's really when you come from a place of genuine curiosity or clarity, or the desire to not make an assumption. I don't want to make an assumption about why you didn't call me back. So I'm just curious. I'd love to know if that's something that you have a burning desire to know the answer to. But it's really important that we do practice finding our voice and being able to communicate and ask for what we want. And it's okay for the person to say yes or no. And that same thing is true for ourselves. People can ask us for what they want, and we have the right to say yes or no too. And I think that's a lot of times what keeps us from asking the questions and gaining some clarity, because sometimes the assumption that we make is the safer space. You know, sometimes we don't want to know the truth about something, so it's just easier to make the assumption. But really, you know, isn't it better to just kind of have that clarity and be able to move on than to use an unsurmountable amount of energy, and thoughts are energy that then can really take you, you know, down a spiral. So I always ask myself the question, like, does this thought really serve me right now? Does this assumption serve me? Is this the healthy assumption to be making? And then the other thing that we work on a lot, because people do assume, I think it's just, again, it's humankind that we see life the same, we believe very much the same things, we judge the same way. We use definitions, because rather than me assuming what your definition of success is based on my definition, I'm going to ask the question to say, hey, what is your definition? Rather than assuming what your definition of a happy marriage is, even if you're my partner, right? To say that, to make that assumption, I just automatically think we're on the same page. But really to ask the questions and get clarification and definitions is really empowering.
Absolutely. So Jane, with all of this in mind, what would your challenge of the week be?
Well, first and always, it's awareness. That's the first thing I want you to practice, is just being aware. Ooh, am I making an assumption right now? And then asking yourself the question, like, do you want to ask some clarifying questions around it? And then just keep asking until you get the answers that you're looking for. And I would really encourage people to anchor in the tool, I don't know their story, just as a way of arresting those thoughts, arresting the emotions, until you can learn more about their story.
All right, Jane. So as we look to wrap up today's conversation, is there anything else you'd like to leave our audience with?
No, just remember that saying that when you make assumptions, you make an ass out of you and me. So let's start not to do that.
Jane, thanks so much for being here today.
Yeah, have a great weekend, Lindsay.